Legacies don't just happen. How to protect yours. A business owner named Larry mistakenly thought he could sell his business for a hefty sum and exit profitably. It was such a sure thing in Larry's mind, he banked on it for years, expecting it would happen, much like we just expect the sun will come up every day. By the time he was 63, Larry needed this dream to come true. You see, he had hit a wall. He was tired of running his plumbing business, really tired, exhausted, since his dad started the company decades before. Larry had worked in the business his entire adult life. Scratch that. He had worked in plumbing, assisting his father on house calls since before he could even legally drive a car. Now that Larry was nearing his mid-60s, he wanted nothing more than to slow down, to take a vacation, to stop working so hard. And even though he didn't have a son or a daughter to leave this business to as a legacy, he wanted to honor his dad's hard work and determination by selling it to a third party for a significant amount, enough for him and his wife to retire on. Doing so, thought Larry, would honor the blood, sweat, and tears he and his father had put into the business all those hard years. Now for some background on this business of Larry's. Located in Florida, it employs 31 individuals. Annually, it produces 3 to 5 million in revenue. By the time Larry decided he was ready to let it go, he'd come to believe he should expect a buyout offer in the $9 to $10 million range. Larry came to this conclusion based upon his P&L reports and the positive solicitations he received from business brokers who would call him up with offers to buy his company. Over the years, he never went too far with those solicitations. It was just a nice ego boost to know his business was in demand. Like I said, things changed when Larry turned 63. Worn out from the constant grind, he finally took a lengthy call with one of the business brokers. In it, the rep asked Larry for financial documents, including company tax returns, to assist her in sourcing a buyout offer. Larry did as asked, then waited for the money to come rolling in. Except it didn't. Larry didn't receive anything close to that $9 million figure in his head. The offer was $3.2 million, much, much less than he had in mind. Devastated, Larry went into the 5 stages of grief. First, denial. He couldn't believe this was happening to him. Surely that sales broker got it all wrong, he thought. My business is worth way more than that. Next, he lashed out in anger. He even called up that broker to yell at her for lowballing him. After Larry finally cooled down, he called her back to apologize. Then he switched to bargaining. He asked her to reconsider her offer, thinking that a personal appeal might shift this broker's thinking. When it didn't, Larry sunk into depression. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, causing him to lose 10 pounds in a week. But before he transitioned to acceptance, the final stage of grief, he took action. Still convinced there must be some mistake, he searched Google for a second opinion. Not knowing anything about his business, the search engine spit out some information that made Larry think that the business broker could be incorrect in her offer. His spirits buoyed. Larry met with his accountant to see if what he learned online was realistic. Unfortunately, his accountant told him roughly the same thing as that broker. Even peers in his mastermind group concluded the same thing once Larry presented them with his financials. His business would only fetch around $3.2 million if sold today. Furious and depressed, again, Larry lashed out at the people closest to him. His poor wife suffered his wrath the most. It never occurred to Larry he was the biggest problem. For all those years, he simply expected to receive a big figure when he finally decided to sell. Never in all that time frame did he attempt to look at his business from an outsider's viewpoint, from an objective point of view. He also never went on the offense about making his business attractive to potential buyers. Things grew so tense with Larry's wife that she finally threatened to move out if he didn't get his anger under control. Larry finally realized he'd gone too far and apologized to her. Temporarily energized by all the drama, Larry vowed to keep on working, building his company up so that it could earn a higher sales offer. All the while, he told himself, the economy will get better, and so will I. What do you think happened next? Larry put in another 2 years of hard work, but then his health rapidly declined. He suffered a heart attack that prevented him from running his company full time. Overweight and weak, he couldn't work anywhere close to the hours he once put in. He eventually took distributions as his company dwindled to a shell of its former self. Once upon a time, Larry had a backup plan. If all else failed, his number two in command, his lieutenant, could buy him out. But this person turned him down when Larry finally came to him. Meanwhile, Larry's workers either left or got laid off as the revenue faded away. A few years later, when people called the number for Larry's plumbing, there was no answer. Emails got bounced back too. Today, Larry's plumbing business is no more. Unfortunately, Larry is not alone. That story was a real downer, but it leads to our first insight. 80% of businesses don't sell. They fold into obscurity. This statistic comes from the Exit Planning Institute. Moreover, it underscores the big idea of my talk today. Legacies don't happen by accident. You need the right roadmap with the right metrics to get you to your destination. Larry discovered this truth the hard way as he watched the company his father first created fade into obscurity. But it doesn't have to be this way. In fact, it shouldn't be this way. In today's talk, I will share with you 4 more key insights that support my big idea. But before we do, it's important you know why this topic matters to me. I belong to North Point Community Church, specifically Gwinnett Church, and our pastor, Andy Stanley, once gave a sermon with this question: what breaks your heart? Right away, I knew the answer. Children who are forced to grow up without families breaks my heart. At the time where I live in Gwinnett County, Georgia, roughly 60 homes were certified to accept foster kids. To put that number into perspective, there are more than 700 kids in our local foster system in Gwinnett County. Because there weren't enough homes, these vulnerable children must be shuffled around to group homes or even transferred and exported to other counties. Who knows what will happen to these vulnerable kids? This broke my heart, and I knew I had to help make things better. As a result of that fateful sermon from Pastor Andy Stanley, my wife and I decided to do something about what breaks our hearts. We became foster parents. And since then, we've had 17 wonderful kids pass through our doors. These are bonus babies beyond our 3 biological children. That was the personal answer to the question, what breaks my heart? The professional answer is the focus of this talk. Seeing so few businesses like Larry's successfully exit or transition troubles me. It hurts me every time I read about a business shutting down, causing so much loss for stakeholders and damage to the community with the void they leave behind. Just like I was determined to contribute to the solution of housing foster kids in Gwinnett County, I feel the same determination to help small and medium businesses. What I care about professionally is enabling legacy. This brings us to insight number 2. Businesses fail to sell when owners lack the right valuation mindset. For Larry, valuation was only a tactical exercise, not a strategic. If he considered the concept of business valuation at all, it was only once in a while and never in a proactive way. He was only using valuation as a defensive tool and tactic to explain he thought his business was worth more than others did. Problem 1, a lack of education. We can point to a lack of education as the root problem for this mindset. In other words, Larry didn't know what he didn't know. Worse, none of his advisors told him to change his thinking. In other words, Larry wasn't hearing presentations like this today to educate himself. Yes, he was part of a business mastermind, but clearly valuation's strategic benefit as the roadmap to success was not emphasized enough for Larry to sit up and take note. Problem 2, inertia. An ancient Chinese proverb suggests the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Unfortunately, many businesses like Larry's stay in reactive mode, putting it off, planting trees indefinitely. Instead, they focus on dealing with pressing matters like putting out fires rather than long-term planning. Put another way, they allow what's going on in the short term to carry them along, never thinking enough about the future. A good example of this mentality can be found in the company GameStop. In January 2021, GameStop's stock price surged due to a short squeeze initiated by retail investors. This produced immediate gains for some investors and company executives. As for the long term, once the frenzy died down, the company struggled with declining sales, increased market volatility, and even scrutiny from regulatory bodies. As of March 2024, Business Insider warned the company's long-term challenges outweighed any short-term gains. These include increased focus on microtransactions, the rise of subscription services. Most of all, no clear strategy to pivot into the new high-growth market segments. You may be wondering, when is the best time to start going on the offensive? Think strategically with your company's valuation. The answer is this very day and the very day you start your company. Larry was in his early 60s when he finally woke up to this blunder. Now imagine if a person in their 30s was to hear and heed these words today. What if they took seriously strategizing for the next 30 years to exit with the right legacy? The results would be incredible. That takes us to problem 3, a lack of preparation. If you want to avoid Larry's failure, you must train like a boxer. Take Muhammad Ali, preparing to fight the Rumble in the Jungle against George Foreman in 1974. Since Foreman was younger and had tremendous punching power, Ali had to train rigorously to improve his stamina. Road work became his go-to. Ali would run miles in the intense African heat to train his body. He even brought in sparring partners to mimic Foreman so he could practice deflecting his opponent's hooks and uppercuts. By round 8 of the match, the older Ali so exhausted Foreman, he could knock the man out, sealing his victory. Business owners need to do something similar. They must train for the fight. My number one advice is to stress test your company and adopt a culture of exploratory stress combined with innovation. Imagine you were sailing a sailboat crossing the Mississippi River. Naturally, you'd want to avoid boulders under the water. They will damage or even sink your ship. But what if you never come across boulders? You will never be a good sailor if you've only experienced placid water. Only tough times develop such character and presence of mind. My advice is make things hard on your company like Ali. Purposefully lower the water. Give yourself difficult obstacles that force you to develop resilience. Do the hard things. To this point, I know of a painting company that embraced this idea. They have a key lieutenant named Sabrina. Sabrina prides herself on never taking sick days. She also handles much of the sales. In fact, she's responsible for 55% of their revenue. Kathy, the owner, heard my advice and decided to take it apart. Though it was painful, she told Sabrina to go on vacation for 3 weeks. Everyone at the company was shocked. What do we do without Sabrina? They wondered. Exactly, said the wise owner. This is exactly my point. Over the next 3 weeks, Kathy wrote down everything that broke down in Sabrina's absence. Prospects dried up. Jobs didn't get done in a timely fashion. Complaints from customers exploded. Were these weeks hard? Absolutely. They were hell for Kathy. But these self-enforced boulders showed her in crystal clear terms the risk she faced by relying on one key individual. Such stress testing was not fun, but it was immensely helpful. Better to do the hard stuff now and prepare as needed than be caught blindsided when the unimaginable strikes. Problem 4, a lack of delegation. As you saw, Larry tried to do it all without a team behind him. Yes, he had his own lieutenant, his own version of Sabrina working for him. Yet when the chips were down, that lieutenant folded. He walked away from the business, leaving Larry scrambling. It's also true that Larry had a few advisors in his corner, including his lawyer, accountant, and the mastermind group. But let's face it, none of them really prepared Larry to exit successfully. To make matters worse, I know of a company owner who ran into a similar trouble, but for a different reason. A person named Rick, who owns a hauling company. Unlike Larry, Rick did give considerable thought to exiting. He began planning for it in his 50s. You'd think Rick's lawyer would steer him on the right path, making introductions to more advisors and preparing to eventually sell Rick's company. That's not what happened. His lawyer discouraged Rick from selling. Why? He viewed Rick as his whale client, or to use another animal expression, his cash cow. Suffering from what's called principal agent bias, Rick's lawyer actively pushed Rick away from preparing to exit successfully. My advice, be on the lookout for such conflicts of interest. They can also derail your plans. Now for our next insight, insight 3. A business owner may be ready to sell, but the business may not be ready. I want to tell you a news story about the head of a successful title company. We will call her Christine. She had the typical problem I often see with business owners. I call it too many boxes syndrome. Like many owners, Christine was responsible for too many boxes in her organization. These included her company's accounting, its finances, its bookkeeping, its sales, its marketing, its operations, not to mention its leadership. Key point 1, delegate. I always tell clients like Christine, it's great that you are so invested in your company's success, but to ensure you exit well and leave your desired legacy behind, you must first drop some of these boxes. You must delegate. Christine was involved in 6 boxes when we first began working together. 5 is better than 6, I told her. 4 is better than 5. 3 is better than 4, and so on. She pushed back on this idea, of course. You don't understand. I need to manage these things or they won't get done right, is what she said. That's when I pulled up an Excel graph for her, and we plotted on the x-axis time, and we plotted on the y-axis was value. And I asked Christine to plot her time versus the value it generates. She quickly saw my point. Her valuable time was better spent not working in her business, but working on her business, i.e., creating systems that remove the need for her to do so much of this work herself. But I can't just delegate everything, Christine told me. I don't want people reading my inbox and scheduling my calendar. Baby steps was my advice to Christine and so many other clients like Christine. She didn't have to go from doing 6 things at her company to 1 overnight. We could take our time with this, allowing her to relinquish control to her team. It always comes down to what you love to do. First, determine what that is, whether it's leadership, sales, operations, etc. This is the one thing you should stay on to do. The other activities, you should delegate them to others. But as you can imagine, this felt uncomfortable to Christine. She didn't like the idea of letting go of the reins. That's when I told her a quick story. Every year, I try to do something scary, something that takes me out of my comfort zone. Recently, it was kiteboarding. Spoiler alert, this sport terrified me. I was also a lot older than the average person who first tries it. One of the very first times I went out on the water, I nearly crashed into a crowd of people standing nearby. At the last second, I managed to eject the kite from the harness and escape danger. No one was hurt, thankfully. The more important point concerns risk. I intentionally took myself out of my comfort zone to go kiteboarding because I know the real danger to life is complacency. Just like business owners need to put boulders in the way of the ship they call their business, they also must step into risk. That's because true risk mitigation requires stepping out of your comfort zone, doing things that scare you. Facing your fears broadens your perspective. It allows you to connect the dots in ways you would otherwise not. To use another metaphor, picture an iceberg. The fearful business owner who stays myopically focused on the ice above the surface misses the big picture, specifically everything that goes on below, the more formidable risks that threaten one's business. These can include, but aren't limited to, owner dependency, key customer risk, key vendor risk, etc. You can't get the true picture of what's going on in your business by merely reviewing your financials. You must go deeper. That all starts by going out of your comfort zone. There's yet another way to get your business ready to sell. Key point 2, diversify revenue. At the same time you need to lean into leadership delegation, you need to diversify your revenue sources. Returning to Larry, this was a problem area that hurt him most when it came time to trying to sell his business. His plumbing work was largely transactional. Customers called him for one-offs like clogged pipes. He didn't have enough regular recurring revenue. This is another area Christine and I sought to tackle as we worked establishing her legacy by successfully exiting her company. The title business can be quite transactional too, as it often involves one-offs like home purchases. But Christine, to her credit, didn't want to put all her revenue eggs in one basket. To ensure she had recurring income, she created a video course. She told and sold to realtors and mortgage companies. She found ways to provide value to her customers on an ongoing basis, stabilizing her income with ongoing revenue. We're on to our next insight. Businesses too often manage the wrong metrics. To understand this danger, I want you to think about New Year's resolutions. Many of us have well-intentioned ideas of how we will do better in the coming year. Top of the list, people want to get healthy. If long-term health is your goal, from what I've learned, there are only 4 key metrics you should really focus on to track your progress. Heart rate variability, VO2 max, sleep quality, not quantity, and cellular deficiency or nutrition. If you use these metrics to assess your health as you make improvements to your life, you can be reasonably sure you're on the right path. Now, what if you focus on other metrics? What if you monitor your daily caloric intake? How about your steps per day? What if you track your health progress based on how many sit-ups you can do? I mean, this might sound, facetious, but it's applicable, is my point. An endless slew of metrics could be used to track your health. Can they be helpful to monitor? Yes, to a certain extent. But are they the most valuable metrics to really chart your progress? Not so much. There's a corollary here to tracking your business. To exit successfully, serving your legacy, business owners have a slew of metrics to choose from. These include revenue, the top line, EBITDA, labor efficiency ratios, even performance with your sales funnel, etc. These are not unhelpful as metrics, but they don't give you the true score of your company like enterprise value or firm value. This is the holistic, comprehensive value of your company. Let me put it another way with a metaphor. Remember when you were back in elementary school and you did finger painting? You might bring back home that artwork and show it to your mother. What would she say? Oh, I love it. She'd even hang it on the fridge. That's great, right? But there is a world of difference between having your painting hang on your mom's fridge and the Louvre. Version 1 is subjective approval. Your mom hangs your picture on the fridge. Version 2 is objective approval. The most prestigious art museum in the world acknowledges your artistry. Your mom will always appreciate all the art you create and put on the fridge. She'll always tell you you did a good job. This is the problem Larry ran into. He was going off his subjective interpretation of his business's worth. But we want the whole world to appreciate our business. We want others, people we do not even know, to be objectively honest in valuing our life's work. To get there, we need the right metric: transferable, sellable, enterprise value, firm value. This is the value that the world sees, not your mom. Again, other metrics like EBITDA and labor efficiency ratios do matter, but they all feed into one ultimate place. Just like with health, if you have your eye on the wrong prize, you may veer off course. If you only focus on one quadrant and not the overall picture of your company's health, it will hurt you. After all, as any business broker will tell you, a business is only worth what others will pay for it. You want your business to be deemed so valuable in the market that buyers are bidding over it just like an eBay auction. While I've enjoyed talking to you today, we are nearing the end of my talk and I've got to land the plane. Insight 5, now is the time to get going. If you recall, we began with a cautionary tale about a business owner named Larry who waited far too long to get going. I told you earlier of the Chinese proverb that states the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now. To inspire you to get going yesterday, I want to tell you a successful story worthy of emulation. For if you know your destination, it's much easier to get there. A business owner we'll call Lauren started a property casualty insurance company at the age of 55. A serial entrepreneur, this was not her first venture, but she hoped it would be her last. Specifically, she wished to exit her privately held company by the age 65. Based in Texas, Lauren's company was earning $12 to $15 million in revenue annually by the time she first approached me to work with her 5 years ago. We began with an initial valuation, then subsequent annual valuations to scoreboard her progress as she moved toward her exiting goals. Since Lauren was educated on the need to be proactive, she didn't allow inertia to take her eyes off the prize. This involved building her dream team of advisors. Hers included a business attorney, a CPA, and a financial planner. This war room, plus Lauren and I, routinely met to ensure Lauren was creating and executing on those goals that would allow her to successfully exit with her desired legacy. Early on in our work together, we began seeking ways to have Lauren extricate herself from boxes. One of the chief areas she wisely chose to delegate was in sales. She hired a chief fractional sales officer. This person hired 6 to 8 account executives, 2 to 4 origination reps, while diversifying income sources. Once sales took off with little to no input needed from Lauren, she stepped down from her roles in accounting, finance, and operations. Before long, her primary responsibility was the duty she loved best: CEO level leadership. Things were humming along, but Lauren didn't rest on her laurels. She took my advice to lower the water so as to confront all those boulders. This required constant stress testing for rainy days, days when everything seemed to fall apart. Lauren even invested in AI modeling software to present worst-case scenarios she could prepare for. This imbued her organization with a culture of innovation. Finally, in 2023, Lauren initiated the sales process for her company. She brought on an investment banker to solicit interest. Before long, she had 3 interested legit suitors. Lauren wouldn't just sell to anyone. She had strict rules to honor her memory legacy. She wanted no PE-backed buyers. She wanted her own people to have autonomy post-sale, and she would need to stay on for 18 plus months to aid the transition. Everything was going swimmingly, but then right as Lauren neared the close of the deal, she lost 2 of her best paying clients. Together, these 2 brought in 20% of her firm's annual revenue. Lauren had to disclose this bad news to her buyer. As you can imagine, this was devastating. Lauren couldn't believe her bad luck. But Lauren is a fighter, And more importantly, she trained for this moment. Joining forces with her fractional sales officer, she leapt into the fray with only 30 to 60 days to plug her leaking ship. Did it work? Yes. Lauren managed to pick up 3 new clients. Not only did she restore the 20% of revenue she'd lost, she added 5% more. What really made her seller confident in continuing the sale was Lauren's track record. She had already shown a history of retention. More, Lauren could demonstrate she had strategic, tactical processes in place. This meant if something negative like this ever happened again to the company, it would be more than prepared to deal with the crisis. Zooming out, the last-minute surprise could have devastated a less prepared company, one like Larry's, not Lauren's, because he had done all the delegation and diversification work in advance. She took the setback in stride. Quickly, she plugged all the holes and sold her business for an above-market price of 8 times EBITDA for $30 million. All along, you have heard me tell you the importance of starting early and training your own mind and your company as a business owner. None of us knows what the future holds for us. The only certainty is more uncertainty. We can view this reality with either fear or indifference, or we can use it as an inspiration we need to prepare for tomorrow, today. Ultimately, we cannot take our business with us, nor can we take our revenue. Only our legacy can last. Fortunately, we have an opportunity to create the future we desire. A future ourselves, our family, our employees, our vendors, our local nonprofits, and our communities desire. My question to you is this: what can you do now to preserve your legacy so you can beat the odds and successfully exit? Thank you for listening. I hope you found